fellow friends of YouTubers. This is Kurt. Welcome back to the Kurt's Place channel here on the YouTube. Well, guys, now in this video, I'm actually going to have a video explaining how I actually go about moving an item from my game room from my location in Maryland to my new location here in North Carolina. This will actually show you the process I go about determining, where I'm actually going to put the item, how I take it apart, all the preparations of taking it apart, reassembling in the new location. And I think this will really help you out. If you have items that you want to move, this I actually think will give you a pretty good idea of what's involved in moving an item from one location to the other, and it'll make it a little easier when you're trying to do a move as well. Now, I want to mention, don't forget to click that subscribe button. If you like what you see, don't forget to smash that like button. Now, if you have any comments, leave them in the comment section down below. And as always, thanks again for watching. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to start our video off here by showing you the living room. Now, what you have to determine when you're going to move into a place. When I came here, this place was completely empty. What you have to determine is you have to kind of walk around and determine where you think everything's going to go. What sort of vision do you have for a place? For example, I wanted to have my furniture and things over on this wall. So what I did is I actually took measurements with a tape measure, measured the entire wall to determine if the furniture and things could fit. And then what I did is I took measurements of the furniture and actually just added them all up together to determine if they would fit on this wall. And they did. They fit quite nicely on this wall. Now, the other thing I'm doing now, too, is I have a TV and stuff that's actually going to go on this wall here. Now, I've already taken measurements and things already to determine if that's going to fit, and I already know it's going to fit. Now, the actual placing of the items, you may still want to rearrange things when you place things, even if you know they're going to fit. Now, for example, a good example is this bar top arcade machine setup I have. Now, these are my bar top arcade machines. Now, I noticed that the counter and everything fit fine, but I had some considerations I had to take in mind is there's a countertop here I actually had to clear. So you'll notice I have one machine that's lower than the other, and that's determined by basically how much room I have to work with. And you're going to have to move some things around as you go ahead and move things in here based on how much space and things you have. So even if you have the right measurements, moving things around is still going to be necessary in the process of getting everything to fit just right. Now, let me go and show you what we're actually going to be placing. This is where my actual game room is going to be setting up, and today we're going to be placing the jukebox. Now, my goal is to have the jukebox. Now, these are actually machines I've actually already moved. Now, these were actually down in my arcade basement tour. If you check out my channel, look under my arcade basement room tour, you can actually see where those were at in my previous location. Now, this actually is my stand-up arcade machine that I have here. And then over here is actually Lester's, the cabinet I built to dedicate to my friend Les Slick. That's actually this cabinet here. Now, ideally, the jukebox, we're going to try to put the jukebox right in this space in here. Now, I've already measured it, and this is where the jukebox should be able to fit. All the measurements and everything look really good. But remember, once you get it in place, you still may have to do a few tweaks as you have it in place, once you have the actual item there, to make sure everything's going to line up the way you want. So what I'll do is let me go and head on out to my van, and I'm actually going to go ahead and show you how I actually place the items in the van as well. Okay, what we'll do is we'll head on out to the van. All right, let's check that out next. Okay, now as we're heading out to the van, what I want you to see in these pictures that I'm going to be putting up. Now, what I did is I actually took a picture of the jukebox before in its current location, and then what I did is I took pictures of the jukebox, various things about the jukebox, for example, like where all the bolts and things are placed, how the TV and everything was mounted, so that way I know when I take it apart where everything's going to go when I put it back together. Having pictures is very important. I have over 100 pictures of my jukebox before I disassembled it, and that way when I get to my new location, it'll make it easier to assemble it as well. Taking pictures is very important on items to make sure they go back together exactly where they came apart. Now, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll show you here in the van how I actually managed to fit the jukebox into the van. Okay, so we'll check. Now, this actually is where I actually put my jukebox. Now, you're going to notice I have the jukebox in various pieces and everything inside the van here, and you're going to see how I was able to fit everything in there. Now, keep in mind that how you actually space things in the van, this takes a little bit of work. It's almost like a jigsaw puzzle. You have to determine where everything's going to go, and that's what took a lot of time, is to determine where everything's going to go. Now, you're going to notice, like, the speakers and things I have, you're going to notice how you have these little shackles to hold everything together. That's important when you're transporting things to make sure that everything's going to be able to fit. Now, this actually is where I put this section here, and then I'll show you the other section over here on the other side. Now, some of the bigger items that I have, for example, my bed and some other things, are actually going to get moved I'm actually going to have a moving company help me out with some of those other bigger things, but then here's some other pieces of the jukebox as well. So you see there? Now, fortunately, my jukebox all came apart in pieces. It was all bolted together, but but like I said, I took a lot of pictures to show how actually everything is actually bolted together. Now, let me go ahead and unload the van, and I'll actually show how I go about placing the pieces inside my home to determine how I'm going to put them together. And then this is the other side. I'll go and show that to you too. So you're going to see it's just getting everything in the right place is really important. Also, not having things too heavy is another thing too. And that's one of the reasons why I determined that the jukebox is what I was able to actually carry this time. And you're going to find as you're moving things from one location to the other, weight's going to be a factor too. So you have to kind of determine how heavy things are going to be when you move things. All right, so I'm going to go and show you what the pieces look like now in the home now before I actually assemble them. Okay, so now I got all the pieces out of the van. You're going to notice, and I actually have them all assembled in the living room here. Now, what you do now is you take those photographs. Remember I told you I took about 100 photographs? Take all the photographs you have, and basically you just work your way from the bottom to the top. Now, for example, like I have pictures like of the tub and everything that it actually sets in. And then I have pictures over here of how this actually goes in place. Now, one of the things you're going to notice is like screws and things like that, like where these screws and things go. How do I determine where those go out when they go into the tub is, I just look at the photos that I took. That's why it's important to take a lot of photos. And some of the pieces actually have tape on them, like left and right. And then remember when I took those pictures? Well, those pictures actually have, if you look at the pictures, you're going to notice that there's actually tape on items that actually show you where they go. For example, like if I go to my pictures, I can see where these pieces here go. Notice there's tape on there, and then there's tape there on the door. Now, the assembly process is very similar to what you did when you took it apart. You just take your time, and you just gradually just assemble it one by one. Now, one of the questions somebody asked me is, they asked me, why did I go ahead and move the arcade machines and things on my own? One of the reasons I wanted to move these arcade machines on my own, things like this, is I had a van for one. I did have a means of being able to move these using a van. The second thing is, I didn't want to trust having anybody move these other than myself because of the fact things could get damaged. And I put a lot of work into making these arcade machines, and that was one of the factors. You know, even like on this Pac-Man machine in here, there's a lot of glass and things. You know, there's glass and things on here, there's glass on here, and there's glass on there. And I didn't want to run the risk of having any of the pieces get broken. And I allowed myself enough time to move everything, so I wasn't in a big hurry. Usually I can carry anywhere from 1 to 2 machines per trip. It just depends how heavy they are. Now, that's one thing to keep in mind when you're moving things. Now, for example, this jukebox was very heavy. The jukebox assembly weighs almost 400 pounds. Even pieces like these in the corner, these are about 60, 70 pounds a piece, each one of those. So you have to determine how heavy it is as well. That's one of the reasons why this trip I could only do the one, because of the weight. Now, same thing with these amplifiers. That was about 60 pounds, and then the speakers, these are about 60 pounds a piece too on the speakers. So all that weight adds up, and you want to make sure you don't overload everything. Now, one of the things I forgot to mention to you that's very important to have, this is actually the floor it's actually going to sit on when it's sitting on the floor. I don't want to have the wheels and things directly on the floor, so it's actually going to sit on this little floor here that I actually made for the jukebox. Now, one thing really good to have is to have a good set of tools. And you're going to see I put a nice little set of tools together. This allows me to do all the basic assembly and things I have on all the items that I have using the items that I have. And then what I'll do now is, the next process is going to be going ahead and reassembling everything and just taking my time, looking at the pictures as I go along, and then just basically reassembling everything. And because I had everything taken pictures of, everything should go together exactly the way it came apart. All right, so what we'll do next is, as I put it together, I'll show you some pictures as I'm assembling it. Okay, so I've already got the first piece of the jukebox put together, which is the door holder that holds the front doors. Now you gotta notice things, for example, like these screws right here. Like where these screws and things are going. That's going to be determined by the pictures that I took. Now, for example, I needed to know the orientation of the piece. Well, these little door stops right here, this actually holds the edges of the door. There's one here, and then there's one here. And then you're going to notice on top, it looks a little bit different. It's got like pins on top. There's one pin there, and then there's one pin there. Now, the way I determined the orientation was I actually referred to my pictures. Remember I told you that pictures are worth 1,000 words? Well, I took over 100 pictures of this. And that made it easier when I put that together. Now, I also had a piece of tape on top marking the top two, but just in case I needed it as an extra reference, I took pictures. Remember, the more pictures you take, the better off you are. You can never have too many pictures. All right, I'll show you as I get further along. Okay, this is something I was referring to earlier about how I have the tape and things marked. Well, all the photographs I have, I actually took pictures as I took these apart, but these little markings right here, like these right here, this determines that everything goes back together the same way. So remember, use as much tape and Sharpies as you need to mark everything so that way it goes back together the way it came apart. Makes things a little easier for you. Okay, as we take a look at the completed jukebox that I just finished up at my home here in North Carolina, a couple things I wanted to add to make things to keep in mind too when you're doing a move by yourself. One of the things that was very important to me was to make sure that I did not overload the vehicle that I was actually carrying this in. Now, the rating on my van, I have a four-cylinder Ford Trans van, says that they suggest not exceeding any more than 2,000 pounds with a cargo on my particular van. The items that I had were not anywhere near that heavy, but the one thing keep in mind is you don't want to overload a van. You run a risk of having blowouts and things like that if you overload a van. So always be aware as you're packing things into the van, kind of get an idea how heavy everything is that you're putting in the van. Even though it might seem easier to put maybe 2 items in the van, you want to always keep in mind that the weight's very important, not to overload the van. The second thing is, or whatever vehicle that you're using to transport, the second thing is the actual time involved. Now, I made this a 3-day process. On Saturday was the day I actually disassembled the jukebox and took the pictures. I brought the items upstairs, and then on Sunday was the day I took the items from upstairs and loaded them into the van. Then I drove to North Carolina. On Monday was the day I actually assembled the items into my new home, and then I actually drove home later that day. And that way, by making it 3 days, I wasn't as stressed out by doing the whole thing. Now, it's going to take me about 6 trips to do this, so that's one thing to keep in mind. And also, you have to ask yourself, how important is it to move an item on your own? Now, my arcade machines, because of how fragile they are, with the glass and everything, it was very important for me to be able to move those on my own. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do that. Now, there's a few items I'm going to have. I'm going to have one of my friends help me move a few of my other items. But main thing with these arcade machines was I just wanted to make a video to explain to you a little bit about how I actually go about doing it. And the main thing to keep in mind is it's very rewarding when you move an item by yourself like that, because you can take a lot of pride knowing that you brought it yourself, you set everything up, and you did it all by yourself, and you take great pride in that. So I hope that this video has been helpful to show you how, if you're planning a move of your own, how you can actually go about doing it in the video. And the main thing to keep in mind is that you're going to have a few surprises along the way. That's to be expected with any move. Now, one thing that really helped me a lot was in my travels is I used Google Maps to help me get back and forth to my location. Google Maps was very important in being able to help me locate my information as far as how I'm going to get, where I'm going to go, what routes and things I need to take, and various other things. So that was a big helper in this too. I wanted to take this time once again by way, thank you for tuning in to the Kurt's Place channel, checking out my video about how to make your move easier. I also want to mention, don't forget to click the subscribe button. If you have any comments, leave them in the comments section. Also, don't forget to hit that like button. Now, I want to mention too, if you want to help to show your support for the Kurt's Place channel, I do have merchandise over from the Kurt's Place channel. There's a link in the video description down below. You can get things such as hats, mugs, and keychains. I try to do my premiere videos on Sundays between 12 and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with an open chat room. And also, I try to do 2 to 3 videos a week as my time allows. Mondays are the days I typically have my arcade game review videos. And I just wanted to say once again, thanks again for tuning into the Kurt's Place channel. Hope you all have a great day now, and I hope that this video is going to help you out with something that you plan on moving on yourself. And as always, thank you again for watching. We will catch you in the next video. I'm also going to have some other videos coming up too, and over the next few weeks on how I actually went ahead about selecting a home, the process of getting a home, and everything I had to do to go through to actually get a home ownership of myself. I want to thank you again for tuning in. Hope you have a great day now. We'll catch you in the next video. Bye-bye now. See you next time. Take care now. Bye-bye now. See you next time.